at the Napa County Historical Society in the Goodman Library is titled Destination Napa Philosophies of Wellness. Focuses on the early health resorts of Napa. You mentioned that Napa was home to 56 health resorts just during the brief period of 1852 to 1899. What purported health benefits drew such vast numbers of travelers to Napa County for their health?
Yeah, we exploded with hotels and restaurants. In fact, sometimes old timers, almost as old as me, say, "Where'd all these hotels come from now?" And I say, "Son, you're much too young to know what Napa used to be like, because we're just I have a letter for the St. Helena Star from 1901, a lady complaining about too many carriages on the road from the hotel guests. Some things never change. But as far as the health, yeah, over 70 health resorts in that brief period. And that was a major driver. And other kinds of hotels through travelers. That's a category of hotel. We have Windy Flats, where the drayage people would come from winters and go through town. They rest as they're climbing up Mount George, and through travelers going from one place to another. We had Center City hotels, that sort of. But the health resorts just boomed and exploded. And the factor is that when you figure back in the day when you couldn't get hot water in your home in San Francisco, Piedmont, Oakland, Woodland, Sacramento, where all the people came from, it was really a chore to get a hot bath. You could come to Napa and just sit in the hot water all day long for free as part of your hotel experience. We had the mineral waters back when science wasn't too clear about health benefit, and health fraud is still the major source of fraud. But back then, when we didn't have the truth in advertising laws, and Shelley actually found one of my early citations where in the 1920s, finally California said, no, you cannot say that your mineral water will clear up scoliosis. And you can't say that, these products have unverifiable health benefits. Back to then, the newspapers were advertising all over California and beyond. Any disease or discomfort could be cured with the mineral waters. And we had so many bottling plants selling. Napa Soda Springs was marketed all over the world. Etna Springs marketed all over the world. A separate income and revenue stream producer at these historic results. And each resort had a different disease that would be cured by drinking their water. We do have rich minerals, and mineral water is known to have some benefits, Epsom salts and the bathing, and so we ran rampant with extolling the virtues of these waters. And they were different. Chemists would come in and assay the waters, and the newspaper ads would be what they had. They wouldn't say what it would cure, but some of them. And people would come and spend quite a bit of time. People used to believe that a higher altitude was peaceful. Most of our resorts were up on Mount Veeder side or on the Mayacamas side or the Howell Mountain side. And each of them would list their actual altitude as part of their advertising. And it was easy to get here because you would just come up the rivers and the ferry. And by 1860, the railroad that Brannan and Chancellor Hartson built. And so you could be in warm climate and hot baths, like hot tub parties. The first resort in the state of California, 1852, was the White Sulphur Springs Resort. And the amazing thing is that it's been in almost continuous operation since 1852. The recent fires burned it down yet again. Over its history, it kept burning down or getting swept away by the floods. They kept rebuilding it. That's Sven Ahlstrom. But he operated White Sulphur Springs for years, and they brought in telephone. They got all the swells from San Francisco would come, and they brought in a telegraph line so you could get the stock prices. Jakob Schramm, before his famous wineries, cut hair for a dime a head weekends as his side job to raise enough money so he could get in the wine industry at White Sulphur Springs. It was the first and best resort in California. Sven got fed up with getting his hotel and resort being swept away. They built a new hotel, and to celebrate on July 4th, one of the employees lit a pack of firecrackers and threw it up in the roof. July 4th, they just got open for the season and burned the whole hotel down. So as a hotel person that Jim and I can relate to, Sven said it's much easier and safer and a better investment to be in the center city hotel business than a destination resort business. So he bought the Windsor Hotel downtown St. Helena, which became the St. Helena Hotel. So also, you probably know there are very few rivers, navigable rivers, and ports along the western coast of the United States. The unique in the entire world is the San Francisco Bay, where you come in the Golden Gate, and then we have a network of rivers that fan out. Petaluma River, Napa River, Sacramento River, Stockton River, so on and so forth. So all commerce and trade went through the river. That made Napa easy to get to. But the Napa River, we were a yachting center back in the 1800s. But different yacht clubs throughout the entire Bay Area would have regattas, and they'd all sail up to Napa, and they would disembark and take stagecoaches and personal carriages up to Napa Soda Springs, probably the most elegant and lavish resort in California at the time. So this was the gem of Napa Soda Springs. Colonel Jackson built it. He had two enterprises, the hotel industry and Napa Soda Springs. It was shipped to Paris. The finest cafes in Paris would serve their Napa Soda Springs water. That's the rotunda that sits up there. The walls are still standing. Magnificent architecture everywhere. Moving on. So we use this is the lobby. That rotunda, Jackson was really going to make it a horse stable. So it was going to be the most expensive horse stables in the world, and it became known as Jackson's Folly. And eventually he took the lead of the Palace Hotel in San Francisco and said, no, I'm going to make these into hotel rooms. There were 60 hotel rooms within the rotunda, and that grand lobby was way ahead of its time. And it was the scene of all the great social events in Napa County. People come up from San Francisco to see this. And the water, which was part of the draw, but the altitude, the fresh food, and the springs, the bathing, the water was actually naturally carbonated. And when they pumped it and shipped it and bottled, they would degasify it and then regasify it to a certain precise level of gasification and then shipped around the world. I have a story about the Palace Hotel in San Francisco running out of Napa Soda Springs water, and they had to send special stagecoaches up to get more loads to serve with their mixed drinks. Originally, you would go from Soda Canyon Road, not Old Soda Canyon Road, not Soda Canyon Road, and they had a reservoir up at the top, and when stagecoaches with wealthy passengers would come past Silverado, which was then General Miller's estate, they'd see the stagecoach and they'd pull a lever, and the water would come out of the reservoir. It looked like this amazing waterfall. As soon as you round the bend and got into Soda Canyon and couldn't see it anymore, he'd shut it off and everything. So that was one of our trick. And the foreman used to stop at Silverado and have coffee with the ranch foreman. But amazing, and you could see the crystal on the top of the copper roof of the rotunda from San Francisco on sunny days. So it was a notable presence. It was just sold to Restoration Hardware.
Yeah.
So they are going to build lodging units, display their wares, and put it in vineyards. And
It has to pass building and planning, you know.
It hasn't passed, but we're hoping.
Wouldn't it be beautiful to have that restored?
Yeah. It's an amazing piece of land with the views are unbelievable. But Sam Brannan, as you probably know, we don't revere him, but he was probably the most colorful guy in early California history. My hero is Mariano Guadalupe Vallejo, but I've researched this guy in many, many books and treatises. He was a serial entrepreneur. He was into everything. He was a scoundrel and a scalawag, and he got nailed fooling around with Lola Montez. He's the most publicized divorce in all-cash divorce settlement in 1872. This Bank of Sacramento took the resort, but this is the biggest resort in all of California, built on the geothermal pools and mud springs, and so he even had 25 houses built around the semicircle, named after famous Californians of the early day. And this is what downtown Calistoga looked like when after Brannan created it. Brannan. Yeah, he was into everything. He made blankets in San Francisco. He made railroad cars. How many of you know that Napa used to produce silk? We brought in the mulberry trees and brought in the cocoons, and Brannan tried to establish a major silk industry, and didn't pan off. It wasn't very profitable. It took too much handwork and that sort of thing. But he had his brandy distilleries. He raised merino sheep. He's into everything, including resort. Our weather, when you think about it, San Francisco was cold most of the summer, and it cost money, and it was tough to heat, and people couldn't afford hot water and baths, most people. They wanted to get away. Monterey Peninsula was often cold and foggy and windy and that sort of thing, and there was no way to get to Tahoe. So unless you're a Donner Party remnants, but that's a different story. My thesis, which I early on discovered, was we have been a hotel destination area since the very first day. Now, in 1848, the first building in Napa was a saloon. Yeah. 1940, and that was built right in the middle of 3rd Street. When they came back from gold prospecting, they had to pick it up and move it. But the second major building, and a lot of these hotels had hotel rooms and then platforms for tents. Another thing, a big business in Napa was drayage. People that would spend the whole summer at these health resorts would have their furniture shipped from San Francisco and Oakland, and it would come across the ferry, and the drayage companies in Napa would pick it up and install it at the health resorts. So all summer long, you have your dresser and your dining room table and your.
How long would the normal guests stay back then?
Back then, it took a day and a half to get here, so they wanted to stay longer. It was traditional. The mother was not working, and so they would take. It was an extended vacation. Some people went to Etna Springs all summer long, all summer. And again, it was seasonal, from May through October. The Veterans Home and the Insane Asylum were a form of lodging. In a very real sense, the elements of hoteling are present in veterans' homes and hospitals. So the Veterans Home, shown here, was one of the first. It became the California Veterans Home. They could have gone anywhere, and the teams and the panels realized Napa had the healthiest climate. They were going to put it up in Atlas Peak. They were going to put the Insane Asylum up in Atlas Peak, but they settled on Yountville, and it's become a classic institution and an important part of the economy. Yeah, so the Veterans Home, 1884, and it was the largest of its kind in the United States. One of the great stories, and we'll probably do a special on this. I know Shelley has followed it. Pachito Springs. It's now known as Indian Springs, and it's one of the great success stories in Napa County. But in the early 1900s, Pachito, a Frenchman and a dye worker, bought a section of Brannan's failed resort, and he said, I'm going to rebuild this once magnificent resort. And he married Georgiana, who was 19 years old. He said, let's go to New York, take the train, and we'll raise the funds to build this magnificent resort. So they go to New York. He hits all the investment bankers and all this stuff, and then he dies. He's there. She's 19. She's never been outside of Calistoga. She comes back. Her husband has just died. She says, I'm not giving this up. I'm going to try and make that dream come true. So she actually built it, expanded it. It went on forever until 1988. The son was born. He wound up operating in it. It was a very immersed family, but this young mother with no training became a heroine of the hotel industry, Georgiana Pachito. And then John Merchant bought it in 1988, changed the name to Indian Springs, and the rest is incredible. But they actually had two geysers. Up in Calistoga, you dig anywhere and you get a geyser. So she had two. She actually had three. I have a rare photo of three of the geysers going at one time. And she'd cap them until the press reporters would come up, and when they were doing sales and marketing and FAM tours, familiarization tours. And then as soon as they come up the Silverado Trail, she'd uncap the geysers, and you'd see incredible.
Wow, it is really, really cool.
This is Dr. Edwin Angwin's health resort. This site became Pacific Union College, which is health-focused. Everyone's favorite, Etna Springs. And Chancellor Hartson, who was probably the most prominent capitalist in Napa County, who got everything going and ran everything, and he even owned the land that Silverado now stands on. Anyway, he built it. When he died, nobody else could buy it. It was already a pretty splendid resort as he kept expanding. So his his advertising agent, Len D. Owens from San Francisco, he was the king of the marketers. He went up to the widow and said, "Hey, I can make this really shine." And so he took it over, he bought it, had some others, he leased it, but he was in charge of the advertising. So I've gone through every weekend travel guides of the regional newspapers, and people used to do it just to see what his headlines were. His most famous headline to get people to come spend the summer there was, "Leave your wife and come spend the summer with us at Etna Springs. They can visit you on the weekends." And so that was Len D. Owens. Someday it's going to be somehow revitalized. There's the interior dining, 110 degrees in Pope Valley, and they're all wearing jackets and ties, and that's the way it used to be. They had their speakeasy like everybody else. Walter Springs. This is NCHS photo that operated forever.
Where's this located, Don?
This is Pope Valley, up north. In fact, I took Catherine to see it the other day, and it had burned down. I'd heard that, but the Sufis operated for many years. Brother Joseph used to come to my lectures, and he kept inviting me to come inspect what was left. And I was always traveling, and I was never, and then it burned down, so I didn't get to see it. But yeah, they were good care. They bottled water. They sold water from that. This is mineral-rich water, but it was an amazing enclave. Oh, so here's one of the you want to talk about health and Napa being a healthy place to be. Rural health retreat, Atwater and Kellogg, on the site of where St. Helena Hospital is now. They came out of Michigan, and they were the Seventh-day Adventists. They had a program of healthy living. So they built the rural health retreat, and it operated for years and years and years, and right on Crystal Springs, and then it converted to the St. Helena Sanitarium. And you would go there as a guest, and I have great photos of, they make you get up at 6 in the morning and jump in the pool, and they have megaphones making you work out and do.
So you could check in on your own, and you could check out on your own.
You can.
Okay.
You kind of paid for a week, so you're disinclined to leave quickly.
Just checking.
So
Napa, as a premier lodging destination area, must have been affected by World War I, the Prohibition, the Great Depression, the World War II. What effects did these potentially existentially threats have on our Napa lodging industry?
Well, each of them had an impact, but not as great as you might expect. Napa lodging industry just kept growing throughout all of these things. World War II, a bit of an effect. Prohibition, you'd think we would have been devastated. But you got to remember, wine wasn't really that important. It just wasn't. Hotels advertised their restaurant fare, nothing about wine. It wasn't an attractor. I'll show you a graph at the very end. But
this is a great photo. It says, "Lips that touch liquor shall not touch ours," according to these women.
So yeah, the other thing is, Napa was a pretty much wide open county. There were bootleggers and distilleries everywhere. And tourists and the TT&O market, hotel industry term, would come up here on weekends to fill their automobiles with illegal booze. Many of the hotels had, in fact, Liz's forebears built a lot of the old great stone edifices in Napa County, including the Stag's Leap Mansion Hotel. And underneath that, during Prohibition, they had the U.S. Federal Post Office. Next to it was a hidden door with a full bar with all the booze next to it. So you could violate some federal laws just by picking up your mail. And the Vandalores, famous Napans. But we got a lot of lodging business for people who came up and bought the wine bricks there was a huge distillery in downtown Napa, mammoth copper. So we're making booze all the time. It was like Chicago, only in bucolic and rustic Napa. So Prohibition didn't hurt us that much. Liz asked me to do just a couple in the 1900s. There were hundreds in the 1900s. A lot of them up in Calistoga, ethnic-based kind of health resorts. But we got Dr. Alder's Springs, we got Cherry's. I was close to the Wilkinson family, advised them. The mud baths. The first mud bath in Calistoga, after Brannan lost everything, two brothers had a bathtub out in the fields, and they'd dig up the mud and put it in the bathtub. There's a spigot. I have a photo of the spigot, and they'd hose you off when you're done. This is Bothay's Paradise Park. We all hiked Bothay Park. Lily Hitchcock was across the little creek, Moore Creek. But their advertising, they built a little airstrip on the other side of Highway 29, and they showed airplanes, little biplanes coming in. And their marketing was fly into Bothay's Paradise for brunch. So in the 1940s and 50s, 30s, that was a big deal. This has all been torn down, but they had the longest bar in the North Bay inside. And after I first presented this a decade ago or more, some locals came up and said, we all called that Paradise Park because the entire top floor was given over to gambling. Slot machines and illegal gambling were prevalent all throughout the North Bay. So that's Bothay's Paradise. This gives you an idea. This is the final.
Okay.
This is wrapping
Are
up.
you bringing us home now?
I'll bring you home now, Liz.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the painstaking result of all those years of research, quantifying, finding so many that nobody had ever heard of. And when I kept finding a new resort, it was a big deal for me. And when I reached 13, Harry Price and I, a fellow historian, said, who could have known there were 300 hotels in Napa County? I eventually got to 700. So we have always been a hotel destination area. But what you can see from this is we kept growing in number of operating lodging right through World War I, Prohibition, the Great Depression, and World War II. It wasn't until 1950 that Napa started its decline. I call that the languishment, and we just kept declining in number of operating resorts. The federal highway system was being built. You could now get to Lake Tahoe. More of the infrastructure is built in the Monterey Peninsula. People were flying more for their vacations. The war was over. You could now go on airplanes. Napa became a blue collar. Napa's population tripled, quadrupled, I have the figure, but during World War II in Mare Island, all of a sudden we became super populated. And we've done a show on Shipyard Acres and Napa Pipe and all that stuff. So yeah, it wasn't that attractive. And then guess what happened at the judgment of Paris? And that tells the story. I did the first economic feasibility study in Napa County history for a hotel. 1973, September. The only branded hotel in the entire 788 square mile county was one branded hotel in the county.
Silverado Country Club? No, that's not a hotel. Hotel St. Helena.
Branded. No brand.
Oh,
The only brand in the entire county, Motel 6. And I told Liz I'd say something profound. So that graph and Motel 6, and we rebounded.
Wow.
Now we're an incredibly vital part of the economy. And so